Alright, we're going to cover chapter 26 in this segment. I've started off with 11 characteristics of monopolistic competition. As you read this chapter, what you're going to see is they compare and contrast it to the previous list of characteristics of oligopoly, monopoly, and pure competition. So we're going to do this with an example of a firm and go through each of these. The classic example of monopolistic competition is the fast food industry. You have very low barriers to entry. To open a McDonald's, for instance, you're talking a few $100,000. Very low. There are many of them. There are tons of firms involved in the restaurant business. They have some market power. What that means is that they have a differentiated product. When you look at it, a Whopper and a Big Mac are not identical. They are similar but differentiated. So that gives them some market power. An example you might look at is a Big Mac might sell for, say, $1.99, where a Whopper is selling for $2.19. Something you wouldn't see in pure competition, but it happens here because they're somewhat differentiated. They're not identical. They have a downward sloping demand curve like a monopoly did. Brand loyalty. This is a new concept. Brand loyalty is trying to get you to choose that brand regardless of what other offerings are there. It has to do with conditioning you to not even think. We're all brand loyal to certain things. I myself, very brand loyal to Mountain Dew. And you'll see that. The idea behind it, the reason that a company wants this loyalty, number one, it insulates them from price competition. If I truly believe that Whopper's better and I am brand loyal to the Whopper, it doesn't matter what the price of the Big Mac, I will still buy it. Number two is it makes the demand curve more inelastic. The more brand loyal I become, the more of a necessity an item becomes. And that's good for the company. Product differentiation, again, you see a lot of advertising here like you did in the oligopolies. Unlike the oligopolies, you have a very low concentration ratio. When we were looking at oligopolies, we talked about a concentration ratio. Remember the output provided by the four largest firms being that of rather high, somewhere in the 60% range. Here, the concentration ratio typically is 20-25% at the highest. We're looking at very low. If we look at the biggest four restaurant chains in America, they still produce very little amount of the total. Independent decisions. The reason for that is there are so many of them that they can't use their energy actually watching each other. They typically just make decisions based on themselves. Zero long-term economic profit. Just like in pure competition, what we saw happen when there was profit to be made, we kept seeing new entrants come into the market. The same thing will happen here. And that supply curve will keep shifting out, which shifts price down. In the end, there'll be zero long-term economic profit because of it. Because they have a downward sloping demand curve, much like monopoly, you'll see where they produce an MR less than P. Margin of revenue will always be below price because of that downward sloping. And a profit maximizing rule is where MR equals MC, just like all the other industries. Now, a couple of things to note here beyond this. This looks very similar to pure competition. But from a consumer standpoint, it is considered very inefficient. The reason being that they have some market power, which means they do a lot of this product differentiation. And I'll give you a couple of examples. How do you compete when you're in pure competition? You have to compete based on efficiency. You have to bring those costs down. That's the way you get ahead in that game. Here, you can use things like advertising. Advertising doesn't add any value to the consumer. And that's where a lot of the money's going. Because of that, it's considered a less efficient market structure than pure competition. The important thing here out of this list is that you know what makes it similar to pure competition, oligopoly, and monopoly, and what makes it different. Just like on the last test, this test is going to start off with about 1/3 of it being comparing and contrasting those market structures. So that's where we covered here in chapter 26. Thank you very much.